For someone who is an Android developer, what were some of the key insights you discovered that they should be very aware of in terms of directing their development practice?
Sure. I think that one of the things that's really interesting when we look at Android data is the extent to which people pop in and out of apps. And I think when you look at survey data, one of the things that you'll find is that there's a big recall error around the way that people recall that they used a device. What we've done is actually go in and figure out a way to monitor the phone passively through an opt-in panel that allows us to see exactly how folks are using the device. And with that, we can see over time how folks are using devices, what apps they're opening, how frequently they're opening that, and the amount of time they spend.
And what have you discovered with regards to that? I mean, how frequently are people jumping around, and what should I be worried about as a developer?
Well, I think one of the big things has to do with the huge extent to which Facebook takes up amount of time that folks use their device. So we see that the number one app that folks are using on their device, both on Android and on iOS, is Facebook. So I think within the social space, there's a big hurdle to jump over in terms of coming up with an app that can challenge Facebook in that regard.
But a lot of people talk about, the way to get discovered is to physically be in Facebook. So that's another way of discovery. One of the things you were talking about is that, I think it was, you said 66% of, and again, I don't expect you to remember all the numbers on your screen, but an enormous majority of people are still only discovering apps through the Android marketplace, and that's a very limited way to discover the thousands of apps.
Well, so what we see, and what that chart actually showed, is there are a number of different ways that people are discovering apps. So you might be discovering apps on the marketplace, you might be getting them through word of mouth through a friend, but overwhelmingly the largest proportion of folks that are discovering apps are doing that via searching the store. So there is, I believe, an opportunity to find better ways for folks to discover apps and move beyond this idea of just searching by category or the top apps. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that once you get into the top apps rankings, you tend to stay there because a lot of people are using, that's the second most popular category through which people search for apps. And so if you can get your way into the top 25, top 50 apps, then more people will download your app, and it's kind of a self-feeding process.
Yeah, and what you just showed is that what is some little over 40% of all apps, 51 plus, are what people use. So if you're not in the top 50, you're pretty much non-existent. I mean, the long tail drops off or it becomes a long tail pretty quickly, yes?
There is quite a long tail on mobile apps, and I think part of that has to do with the discovery process, though. If you're browsing on a small screen and you have a limited amount of time through which to find apps, I think there's still a lot of way to go for developers and for the folks who make the operating systems to make discovery an easier proposition.